my first video about our travels during the COVID-19 outbreak, I recorded the journey Katerina and I had while striving to get back to Montenegro so we could ultimately go home to America. We arrived back in Montenegro in June of 2020. I began to think of a plan for me to be able to stay in Montenegro for more than 3 months because I was not allowed to travel outside of the country. The only way for me to be allowed to stay would be to obtain a Montenegrin residency. So now we are going to be getting myself residency here. I'm going to be opening up a company, and this is going to help me get residency here for a year. I began establishing a Montenegrin company for my art. It took the help of many people nearly every day for the next 3 months to officially open the company and do everything else necessary to apply for residency. I literally could not have done it without the help of many people because I didn't have a car nor did I speak the language well enough. Step 1 of Operation Get Hunter Montenegrin Residence has finished. Now we only have 526 steps left to go. In the time that wasn't spent in effort to get all the paperwork done for my residency and my company, we would enjoy our time being back with Katerina's parents. We took care of the garden, we made homemade jam, we met a stray cat named Steve, we went on short walks with the neighborhood dog Kuto, and we tried to relax. For me, it was kind of hard to relax. Over the past year, I have been having the worst anxiety of my life. Between the stress and fear of the pandemic, being in another country, not knowing when Katerina and I would be able to go back home to America, and being away from my family during the pandemic, I was extremely overwhelmed. I went to the doctor due to some stomach pain that I had for over 8 months, and I found out that this stress created gastritis, and I had to have a very unpleasant procedure and stick to a strict diet for about 4 months. After that procedure, I finally and officially received my Montenegrin ID, and things began to calm down for a while. Then COVID-19 began to spread heavily through Montenegro at this time as well, and the situation got beyond the country's control. Hospitals were overflowing and there was not enough resources or staff to take care of everyone who needed care. Even the national patriarch died. October rolled around and we were mostly just staying inside each day, making sure we were not exposing Katerina's immunocompromised parents to the virus. Even with our biggest efforts, Katerina's father still got the virus from a coworker, so everybody living in our house began to separate. The people who indefinitely had the virus separated from the people who likely had the virus, and I isolated by myself because we thought that although it was very likely that I had the virus, it was still very possible that I didn't get it, so I ran away and I took Steve the cat with me. Ultimately, everyone in the house except for me tested positive. I do not know how I managed to avoid it, but somehow I did. While Katerina battled with some harsh symptoms herself, she took care of both of her parents. Steve and I became good friends while I was separated from the rest of the family in the house. I isolated upstairs on a floor that was much like a big attic. Most of the space up there was used for storage, but there was small beds and I even had a TV. There wasn't any heating up there, so as the winter came closer, it would get much colder, and between the cold and the large amount of dust from the exposed brick walls, I kept getting sick. I was able to use a small area heater, and that made the situation a lot better during the day. Katerina and I came up with a pulley system to send things to each other so we wouldn't have to be in contact. She would send me movies, and I would send her snacks. I made soup and beans from a small burner I found that was made to burn hookah coals. I often reorganized things and went on long walks every day to keep myself occupied. While I worried about Katerina and her family, Steve was a good companion to have to keep my spirits up. A little more than a week into me being upstairs, both of Katerina's parents, her mom who had stage 4 cancer, and her father who has been a lifelong smoker, got to a critical condition and had to be hospitalized. Both Katerina's father and mother had pneumonia and an extremely high fever. We were forced to face some of our biggest fears, being alone, illness, and losing loved ones. It was only then that I learned how to step up to the fear and try to be positive for the people around me. I video chatted with Katerina every day and watched how selfless she was while she was so scared to have the virus, but she never showed an ounce of fear when she took care of her parents, and she didn't even have someone to take care of her. The day we figured out that Katerina's father tested positive for the virus, Katerina didn't even hesitate for a second to make sure that she could take care of him in every possible way he would need. The same day when her mom began to show symptoms, Katerina selflessly spent her entire days as an effort to make them as comfortable as possible. Katerina knew she would get the virus if she did this, but she never questioned her decision for a second. Seeing this showed me such a deep love that I was not able to understand before. Seeing this selflessness taught me that love conquers fear. So I tried to learn how to act and think with love rather than fear for the first time since I had left America. About 3 weeks after Katerina tested positive for the virus, Katerina and I began to go on walks together while wearing masks and not walking close to each other. During this time, Katerina and her mother tested for the virus again to see if they were negative, and both were oddly still positive after having had the virus for over a month. It took one more week for both of them to test negative and for me to be able to be around them again. I had spent a month and a half upstairs until I came back down again. It wasn't all bad things that came from this virus. Miraculously and thankfully, everyone in Katerina's family recovered from the virus and are still healthy today. For the first time in years, Katerina's mother's tumors had actually gotten smaller after she had COVID-19, and Katerina's dad quit smoking for the first time since he had started smoking when he was about 21 years old. Now it's January of 2021, and we still don't know when we'll be able to go back to America, but we play chess nearly every day, and we're much closer as a family. We are very lucky to be able to be in the situation that we are in, and my heart aches so deeply for the people who have lost loved ones to the virus and other catastrophes that have happened this last year. With the events of this year that have brought us so much closer, we spend much more valuable time together, and we look at each other in the eyes when we talk to each other. Katerina's family has lost multiple lifelong friends and colleagues to the virus, and I'm learning to never take for granted the ones that I love. I'm not immune to fear, but I feel like I have a healthier relationship with it now. I began to see the bigger picture. I saw that to act out of love to someone, even though I'm afraid, is one of the most terrifying yet rewarding acts I could make.